If you're a coach, consultant, or course creator and you're posting consistently, you're sharing the education and you're giving away so much value, but that content isn't converting into the number of clients that you actually want, then this is for you, because this problem is way more common than you might think. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Leruo Theledi, and I've worked with multiple coaches and consultants, helping them scale to 6 and 7 figure months. And on this channel, all I speak about is the lessons that I'm learning on this journey, working on these projects, so you can take those back and use them to grow your own business. So if that sounds like something interesting for you, make sure to subscribe. Now let's get into it, because at the very end of this video, I want you to leave knowing exactly how you can go out there and fix this for your own business if you struggle with this issue. So we're going to be breaking this up into 3 main parts. Number 1, we're going to be going over the content trap and the biggest hamster wheel that a lot of coaches, consultants, and creators fall into when they're trying to get more clients for their business. The second thing we're going to be covering is the content that actually makes people buy from your page and the thing that truly moves the needle. And then the last and final thing we're going to be chatting about is how to break out of that trap and fix this problem as soon as possible. So let's start off with the content trap. Now, most of the coaches that I work with mainly use Instagram as their primary source of getting leads. And what you need to understand with a platform like Instagram is that your content has 2 jobs, right? Get reach, get enough engagement, and then convert that reach, that engagement into clients. Those 2 jobs are connected, but they're not the same thing. Instagram only cares if you get engagement, shares, likes, reach, and your business only cares if that actually converts into money. And usually that gap is where the trap begins. Now, to better explain this, I'm going to use an example from one of the coaches that I worked with who had over 1 million followers. She was in theory doing everything you're supposed to be doing, posting content around your topic, having clear offers that you promote within your content, sharing value and education, and doing some basic storytelling. And with her, the audience seemed to like it, right? The reach went up, the engagement went up, she had some inquiries, and overall, she was starting to get attention to her business. So naturally, she continued to double down and do more of what was working on her brand, what was getting her that engagement, what was getting her that reach. And primarily that was a lot of value, education, tutorial-based content was starting to really resonate on the platform. And of course, when Instagram sees something consistently do well, it just pushes it to more people more likely to engage with that content. Everything in theory looks like it was moving in the right direction, but when you look at the rate at which the followers and the engagement was growing, it did not match the rate at which the revenue was actually growing. And to be fair, she was actually getting more leads, more people inquiring, right? More people who showed interest. So it did in theory look great, but the rate at which that was growing was completely different to the rate at which the account was taking off. She'd become incredibly good at generating demand for these tutorials, for this education-based content, but that demand was not converting nearly at the same rate into the true transformation which she actually sells. So here's what you need to understand about this specific issue. Your content doesn't just attract a type of person, it selects a type of behavior. Someone can seem like your ideal client or show this type of interest, but ultimately not end up converting into the offers which you truly sell. They followed you for that hack, that tutorial, that educational piece of content, and ultimately this was their true intent, meaning the more of this content that you give them, the better it performs. And in 99% of the cases, this becomes a bigger and bigger problem on scale, because the more content you share, the more you attract this intent and this behavior. And in many cases, right, this seems like it's aligned with your core transformation and your core offer, but it actually isn't. Someone can easily save a fitness tip, but not actually be ready to take the steps to lose 20 pounds. Or somebody could be interested in your design hack, but not actually be serious about using it to generate more clients for their business, all right? This is a really important thing. And oftentimes what happens is your whole brand, which is meant to generate sales for your business, actually optimizes for the demand of the content format, for the demand of Instagram, right? And for the goal of getting reach, engagement, more than actually converting those into clients. And this is the exact content trap, right? Because it happens to so many people. They see the positive signs, they see the engagement, they see the reach, right? And they think that this is what's working because it's easier. It's easier to see amazing comments, people saying, I love your hacks, I love your tips, I love what you're sharing, I love the knowledge you're giving away, right? But ultimately, you got to ask yourself, the rate at which that increases, does it match the rate at which it increases in my bank account, right? And this is one of the most common things I've seen amongst a lot of different coaches. So let's go into the second point, which is what actually makes people buy. Now, let me be really clear about something. I'm not saying you should not post educational content at all. I know coaches that are crushing it and sharing these value-based tutorials, sharing this education, sharing this hacks, and making an absolute killing. The difference is that their education sits underneath their core marketing message and doesn't compete or replace it. Let me show you exactly what I mean. I recently worked with a fitness coach doing $100,000 to $200,000 per month, and he had less than 100,000 followers. And his content, honestly, wasn't the most creative, wasn't the most special. In fact, it was pretty average. It's not like you're gonna go on Instagram and see and be like, wow, his content was amazing. It actually looked pretty simple and pretty average, right? But he was still able to get such amazing results. The key thing is that with the moment you land on his page, his core marketing message was unmistakable. He focused on helping moms over 30 in Germany with losing weight through basic nutrition plans. Every single detail on his page reinforced that. His case studies spoke to that person. Hacks, his tips, his education, everything was aligned with that core transformation of getting that outcome. He speaks about stuff like the busy schedules, the school run, managing kids, being overwhelmed and super tired by the time you get home, where you have to now think of meal plans. His whole profile was designed around this messaging, and his education content didn't compete with that. And once again, like I told you, he was getting very little reach, right? His posts were not getting a lot of views, not getting a lot of reach, but he was actually converting those people into more money because he didn't fall for the content trap. So now that you understand this example, what are the 3 things you have to have on your profile to be able to create that same effect? How do you make sure that I'm not falling into this content trap, that I'm not creating education-based content that is not aligned with the actual intent that I want to create on my profile, okay? It comes down to 3 simple things. Number 1 is the dream outcome, all right? This is really, really simple and very, very basic, right? You need to be able to vividly show the outcome with which you promise people, okay? That's really, really obvious, really simple. That can be your own personal results, your client results, but this should be vivid, okay? This is really, really important. Everything that you share must connect to this dream outcome. And I want you to be very careful and specific about this, because oftentimes what can happen is if your educational hack or content, right, share something that is oftentimes not connected to that dream outcome. And it can be really hard to sometimes know this, right? But for example, like if you have a fitness tip, right? And you share that and you help people get this one little nugget, you got to be careful with stuff like that, because ultimately you need people to be invested in that ultimate outcome, right? And oftentimes what I've seen is that audiences that are just looking for certain like tiny little hacks sometimes don't have the same intent as that end buyer, all right? So the dream outcome needs to be very obvious on your page and very, very clear. And if you have your educational piece of content, it should always somehow connect back to that dream outcome. The second thing that needs to be obviously clear on your page is the who, right? And how specific that goes, okay? Now this varies definitely on how competitive your market is. Some people can just say, I help people with this outcome, and they can convert people successfully from their content. But for most markets that I've seen in health, wealth, or relationships niches, is you likely need to be very specific on the type of person, whether that person is a woman over 30, whether that person's this over that. You gotta be somewhat specific in order to differentiate in 2026 and in order for you to start standing out, right? And then last but not least, you need to have a clear process or method in how you do it. And once again, if you are in a highly competitive market, that needs to really be clear, because that is also a way that you stand out. Now, these 3 things might sound really, really simple, but this ultimately makes the biggest difference on your ability to convert a view into a sale. And once again, we optimize for engagement, reach, and we almost lose track of the 3 most important levers that actually make a difference, okay? And I want to use an example because I also worked with a design coach not too long ago, and essentially she was also kind of focused on design, and she was like a little bit maybe more broad with her messaging, and her method really wasn't clear. And she would, yes, get some reach from the content, get some engagement from the content. It would not really result in the number of clients she actually wanted, but she didn't nail those 3 things. She was just so focused on optimizing for what was getting engagement, what was getting reach. And by the way, guys, Instagram pushes engagement to people who are also sometimes broke. They just don't have money to invest into what you want to invest into and what you have, especially content where it's like just shortcuts and stuff. It attracts a lot of broke people, and these people will not convert and buy your offers, right? And that's also part of the problem. So once we got clear on those 3 things, her content was to some degree less, viral in just itself, right? But she was getting significantly more of the right people on her page who understood those key 3 things, right? And once she optimized and improved those 3 things, she was clearer on the who, she was clearer on the method, and more differentiated on the method, then she was actually able to start converting more people into money. So what's the easiest step that you can take to break out of this trap? All right. The first thing I would always do is I would take a look at your best customers. All right. Look at the people who you enjoy working with, who are the easiest for you to get results with, and ask yourself, what is that dream outcome that you can consistently just get? And for who is that person, right? Who is that ideal person that's just so easy and it's so fun for you to deliver results for that person? Get specific on that dream outcome and that person, because that level of specificity is going to help your content stand out regardless of whether you get stuck in the content trap, right? The content trap is just a content cycle. So if you get really clear on that, it's going to help your core marketing message. And then also ask yourself, from the clients that you have, what was maybe a framework that you consistently implemented with them that generated really great results? Because frameworks are super, super powerful, right? Now, I want to give you one more example of a relationship coach. And basically, she was helping women attract dream partners, okay? And funny enough, she actually realized that she liked working with introverted women because they were very much like her, and she could understand that persona at a much deeper level. And so she started focusing more on introverted women who wanted to attract their dream partners, okay? She got really specific about it. And then she had a framework which she walked them through that helped them to a little bit be more confident, a little bit be more this. And then she coined that framework and called it reverse attraction. And when people heard this marketing message from her content without it going viral, she was actually able to convert really good and really premium leads into her programs, okay? So this is just an example of applying that same thing, looking at your best customers, asking who you want to focus on, and then trying to extract any frameworks you might have so that people come and they see, wow, you have a little bit of a unique method, and that's something I haven't seen before. These levers will do significantly more work than optimizing for your next hook, for your next dancing video, for your next thing. And I've seen so many Instagram growth coaches tell you, use this tactic, use that tactic, use this thing. But I can tell you now, guys, the people who make the most money are not necessarily the people who get the most views. And we're in the business of making money for our coaching, for our consulting, for our course creator business. And I just want to always bring it back to these basics because they ultimately make the biggest difference. Now, with that said, I hope this video has been able to help you and maybe give you some light on this if you're struggling with this exact situation. And if you want more content like this, make sure to drop a subscribe and hit that bell notification so you get notified on the next video that I produce. Now, if you also want help with growing your coaching business, I'll leave a few resources down below that you can check out whenever you want. All right, so good luck with your business, and I hope to one day see you on the beaches of the world.